The twin moons hung low over the alien city, their pale light spilling across the silver rooftops. It was a night of celebration, the air alive with music that sounded like 100 wind chimes swaying in the breeze. Humans and aliens mingled. In the central plaza, their laughter echoing under the starlit sky. Ethan Cole stood near the edge of the gathering, a glass of alien fruit drink in his hand. He was a human ambassador, sent to this distant world of Vera to strengthen peace between their people. But right now, peace felt far away in his mind. His thoughts were stuck on one person, Lyra. She moved through the crowd with an elegance that didn't belong to this noisy place. Her long silver hair shimmered in the moonlight, and her deep violet eyes held the kind of sadness Ethan could never ignore. Months ago, during a raid by alien rebels, he had saved her life, pulling her from the wreckage of a collapsing building. Since then, she had been polite, grateful, but distant. Tonight, she approached him, her steps quiet despite the music. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the wind, "I never thanked you." "Not truly," he smiled faintly. "You've already thanked me, Lyra, more than once." She shook her head, stepping closer. "No, not like I should." Her eyes glistened as if she was holding back something more than just words. "You risked everything for me, and I can't forget it." Before he could respond, she reached for his hand. Her fingers were warm and trembling. The music around them faded in his mind. The world seemed to narrow down to just her eyes and the sound of his own heartbeat. And then, without thinking, or maybe thinking too much, Ethan leaned closer. Lyra didn't move away. Their lips met, a soft, hesitant kiss. Brief, but powerful. It was a moment that should never have happened, yet it felt like it had been waiting for a long time. When they pulled apart, Lyra's expression was unreadable. Her breathing was quick, her hands still holding his. Then her eyes widened, not with joy, but with fear. "Ethan," she whispered, glancing around, "you shouldn't have done that." He frowned. "Why? What's wrong?" Before she could answer, two alien figures approached from the crowd. Their armor caught the moonlight, their faces stern. They spoke rapidly in their native language, and Lyra's shoulders stiffened. "They want me to go," she said quietly. "Right now, what?" But why? She cut him off, her voice trembling. "If anyone asks, tell them it never happened." The soldiers stepped between them, guiding her away. Ethan stood frozen, watching her silver hair disappear into the crowd. The music started again in his ears, but it sounded distant, hollow. He didn't know what rule he had broken, what line he had crossed. All he knew was that something had changed in that moment. Something irreversible. Hours later, Ethan sat alone in his quarters, the city lights glowing outside his window. He kept replaying the moment in his mind, the way her lips had felt, the fear in her eyes afterward. He had kissed her, yes, but it wasn't just a kiss. It was something else, something heavier. He told himself it was just confusion, just a misunderstanding between species. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. The sound of footsteps outside his door pulled him from his thoughts. He waited for a knock, but it never came. Instead, there was a faint voice, muffled through the metal. 3 words, barely more. Then a breath. "Don't forget me." By the time he opened the door, the hallway was empty. Ethan stood there, staring into the shadows, his chest tight. He didn't know why those words felt like both a warning and a promise. All he knew was that this was far from over, and whatever had started tonight would change everything. The next morning, the city was quiet. The music, the lights, the laughter from the celebration were gone, replaced by the low hum of alien transport ships in the sky. Ethan woke early, still carrying the weight of last night in his chest. His first thought was Lyra. He headed straight for her quarters. They were in a section of the diplomatic housing reserved for Veran citizens working with humans. But when he reached her door, something was wrong. The entrance panel was dark. No power, no welcome light. He pressed the chime. Nothing. He tried again. Harder. Still nothing. A passing alien attendant paused when he saw Ethan. "She's gone," the attendant said in a flat voice. Then walked away without another word. Ethan blinked. Gone? Gone where? But the alien was already gone, inside the council chambers. His questions were met with cold stares. The alien leaders sat in their high chairs, their silver robes flowing like water. "Her service here is complete," one of them said. "She has returned to her people." "That doesn't make sense," Ethan argued. "She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave a message. It is not your concern." The counselor interrupted. "This matter is closed." The session ended without another word, and Ethan was left standing in the empty hall. His fists clenched. Back in his own quarters, he tried sending messages to the last communication. Link Lyra had used every attempt, bounced back invalid code. No connection. It was like she'd been erased from the system. Days turned into weeks. Rumors began to swirl through the human sector. Some whispered that Lyra had been taken to a remote facility for contamination screening. Others claimed she had been punished for some unspoken offense. Ethan didn't believe any of it. He knew there was more to the story. He remembered the fear in her eyes after the kiss, the way she told him to pretend it never happened. It was late one night when something unexpected happened. Ethan was at his desk, going over trade reports, when his console beeped. A private message had come through encrypted. Untraceable. The message was short. Only 3 words. "Don't forget me." Ethan's breath caught. The same words she had whispered outside his door on the night she vanished. He stared at the screen, but before he could reply, the message deleted itself. The console returned to its normal display as if nothing had happened for the first time in weeks. Ethan felt a strange mix of hope and dread. She was alive, but why couldn't she tell him where she was? Why was she hiding? The next morning, he noticed something else: 2 alien guards stationed near his quarters. Their eyes followed him wherever he went. When he left to visit the market, they followed. When he returned, they stood at the end of the hall, silent. And still, it became clear to him they were watching him, not for his safety, but to make sure he didn't go looking for her. One evening, as the red sun dipped behind the skyline, Ethan walked along the upper balcony of the city. Looking out over the glowing towers, his communicator buzzed softly. He lifted it to his ear. "Ethan." The voice was quiet, rushed. It was Lyra. "Where are you?" he whispered. "I can't say," she answered. "They're listening. I only have a few seconds." "Lyra, what's happening? Why did they take you?" There was a pause. Then her voice trembled. "Because of the kiss. Ethan, you don't understand what it means here." The line went dead. Ethan stood frozen under the fading light, the communicator still in his hand. Now he knew one thing for certain. Last night's kiss wasn't just a mistake. It was the reason she had disappeared. And it was only the beginning of something much bigger. Weeks slipped by, yet the memory of Lyra's voice lingered in Ethan's mind like a shadow that refused to fade. She had called him, whispered the truth, then vanished again. The city of Vera moved on as if nothing had happened, but for Ethan. Every day felt like waiting for a door to open that never would. The alien guards were still there, always at a distance, but always watching. Ethan could feel their eyes on his back whenever he stepped outside. Their presence was a constant reminder. He was not trusted anymore. He tried to focus on his work as a human ambassador, attending trade meetings, reviewing agreements, but his mind wandered. He would catch himself staring at the empty seat where Lyra used to sit in council sessions. He would hear her laugh in his memory, soft and quick, as if she was afraid to be heard. One rainy evening, Ethan sat in his quarters, watching water run down the glass walls. The city outside was blurred and distant. I hadn't received another message since that night. No calls, no whispers, only silence. It was almost midnight when a faint sound broke through the patter of rain. He frowned, leaning forward. It wasn't a knock, it was softer, like fingertips brushing against the door. He rose slowly, every movement tense. The guards were usually stationed far down the hall if someone had reached his door unnoticed. It meant they were either very brave, very desperate. When he opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only the dim light panels hummed overhead. But then, from the far end of the corridor, a shadow moved. It wasn't walking normally. It was slipping from one dark corner to another. Avoiding the light, Ethan's breath quickened. He stepped out. Following, the figure turned a corner, and when Ethan caught up, it was gone. Only a small object lay on the floor, a silver pendant with an intricate design etched into it. He recognized it instantly. It was Lyra's. She had worn it every day since he met her. He picked it up, the cool metal pressing into his palm. This was no accident. She had been here. She wanted him to know. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept turning the pendant in his fingers, trying to guess its meaning. Was it a sign for him to wait, or a plea for help? The next day, Ethan noticed something strange. The guards were gone. No one was following him anymore. At first, it felt like relief, but soon he realized it was something else. This wasn't freedom. This was a trap. They wanted him to think. He was unwatched, so he might make a mistake. He decided to test it. He took a route through the lower city, weaving between crowded markets and dark alleys. If anyone was tailing him, they would have to show themselves, but no one did. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were on him from the shadows. That night, as the storm winds howled outside, Ethan was awoken by a sound that made his heart race, a voice calling his name. It wasn't coming from the door this time. It was coming from outside, far below his balcony. He rushed to the glass. Wallen looked down. In the pouring rain, a cloaked figure stood on the narrow walkway. Head tilted upward. "Ethan," the voice called, barely reaching him over the storm. Without thinking, he threw on his coat and hurried down. His boots splashed through deep puddles until he reached the lower level. The figure was still there, standing perfectly still. He approached, his breath misting in the cold air. "Lyra?" The figure pulled back the hood for a moment. The rain blurred his vision. But then he saw her face, pale and tired, her violet eyes shining in the dim light. It was her, but before he could speak, she held up a hand. "We don't have time." "They know I'm here," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "Ethan, I have something you must see." From beneath her cloak, she pulled out a small, wrapped bundle, cradling it close to her chest. "What is that?" Akeda asked. Her lips trembled. "It's why they took me away." Before Ethan could process her words, heavy footsteps echoed down the alley, armored shadows closing in. Lyra's voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Run," and then she placed the bundle into his arms. The rain poured harder, stinging Ethan's skin as he clutched the bundle Lyra had thrust into his arms. It was surprisingly light, yet he could feel something alive within it. Shifting gently, his heart pounded. "Go, Ethan," Lyra urged, her voice sharp but trembling. She turned to face the approaching guards, her cloak whipping in the wind. The shadows of their armor loomed closer. Weapons raised, Ethan hesitated for only a moment before he ran. His boots splashed through the puddles, the bundle held close to his chest, behind him. The clash of voices in the alien tongue mixed with the roar of the storm. He ducked into a narrow passage between two buildings, the sound of pursuit echoing behind him. He needed to get somewhere safe, somewhere the guards wouldn't dare to follow. His quarters were out of the question. They were surely being watched. After weaving through the twisting back streets, he finally reached an old storage chamber deep beneath the city's lower district. The smell of rust and damp air filled his lungs. He placed the bundle gently on a crate and began unwrapping it when the last layer of cloth fell away. Ethan froze. It wasn't a weapon, it wasn't food or valuables. It was a child, a small boy, no older than a few months. His skin was pale like Ethan's, but his hair shimmered with the same silver hue as Lyra's. Tiny pointed ears peeked through the strands, and his eyes half closed and sleep glowed faintly with a violet light. Ethan's breath caught. Dear God. The truth hit him all at once. This was her child, their child. The door to the chamber creaked, and Lyra slipped inside, soaked from head to toe. She closed it quickly and leaned against it, breathing hard. I had to bring him to you, she whispered. Ethan's voice was low but urgent. Lyra. What is this? Why didn't you tell me? She stepped closer, her eyes on the baby. Because they would have killed him, Ethan. The council calls children like him abominations, a danger to the purity of our people. When I learned I was carrying him, they sent me away. They told me the child would be removed. Her voice cracked. I couldn't let that happen. Ethan's hands trembled as he looked at the boy. You've been hiding all this time? Lyra nodded, moving from place to place, staying ahead of the council's hunters. But they're closing in now. I can't protect him alone. Ethan felt a surge of anger rise in his chest. Then we protect him together. Lyra looked at him, searching his face for doubt. Instead, she found determination. A faint smile touched her lips despite the fear in her eyes. I knew you'd say that, before they could say more. A sudden pounding shook the door. Voices shouted in the alien tongue, demanding entry. Lyra's smile faded instantly. They found us. Ethan scooped up the baby, wrapping him tightly in the cloth again. Is there another way out? Lyra nodded toward the back wall, a maintenance shaft. It leads to the old transport tunnels. They moved quickly, prying open the rusted hatch. The smell of damp stone rushed out, and the distant hum of machinery echoed below. Ethan helped Lyra climb in first, then followed with the child cradled carefully against him. As they crawled through the narrow passage, Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. Ethan, once we reach the tunnels, we'll have to leave the city. There's nowhere here that will keep him safe. Ethan glanced at her. Then we leave, no matter what it takes. Behind them, the storage chamber door burst open, and the sound of boots thundered against the floor. But the maintenance shaft twisted sharply, taking them deeper underground. They didn't stop until they reached a small junction where the tunnels branched in 3 directions. The air was cold and heavy, dripping water echoing in the dark. Lyra turned to him, her silver hair clinging to her cheeks. We'll take the southern line. It leads to the outskirts. From there, we disappear. Ethan nodded, tightening his hold on the child. We disappear. In that moment, he knew one thing: he had kissed her without knowing the cost. But now, the cost didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was protecting the life they had created. The tunnels were cold, damp, and alive with echoes. Every step Ethan took splashed in shallow puddles, the sound bouncing off the curved stone walls. The baby in his arms stirred, but didn't cry. As if sensing the danger around them, Lyra moved ahead, her cloak dripping with water, her steps quick and sure. Behind them, faint voices echoed: alien hunters. Their boots clanged against the tunnel floors, the sound growing louder. They're gaining on us, Ethan whispered. Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her violet eyes flashing in the dim light. Then we moved faster. They took the southern line. Just as she had planned, the path narrowed, forcing them to press close to the walls. Strange glowing plants clung to the damp stone, casting an eerie blue light over their faces. The air grew thicker, carrying the scent of rusted metal and stagnant water. At a junction ahead, Lyra hesitated, listening. They've split up. Some are coming from the front. Ethan's heart thudded. So we're trapped. Not yet, Lyra said, pointing to a side passage barely wide enough for one person. There's an old service route. It's risky, but it bypasses the patrol lines without another. Word. They slipped into the narrow corridor. The walls were slick, and the floor sloped downward sharply, forcing Ethan to balance carefully with the baby in his arms. Every step seemed to take them deeper into the underbelly of the city. Suddenly, the sound of machinery roared from ahead. They emerged onto a rusted metal walkway that ran along the side of an enormous underground water channel. The current below churned violently, carrying debris through the darkness. "This is the only way," Lyra said, stepping onto the swaying walkway. Ethan followed, the metal groaning under his weight. The baby shifted slightly, and Ethan tightened his hold. "Hang on, little one," he whispered. Halfway across, a sharp clang rang out behind them. Ethan turned and saw shadows moving. On the far end of the walkway, guards had found the route. "Go!" Lyra shouted, picking up her pace. The walkway rattled with every step. They reached the opposite side, and Lyra yanked open another maintenance hatch. The stale air inside was heavy, almost suffocating. But it was their only choice. Inside, the space was tighter than before, forcing them to crawl. The baby made a soft noise, but Lyra reached back to gently touch his head, calming him instantly. "Just a little longer," she murmured. The passage tilted upward, and after several long minutes, they emerged into a forgotten section of the city's lower docks. The air was colder here, carrying the smell of the open wastelands beyond. Ethan took a deep breath. "We're close to the edge," Lyra nodded. But her expression was tense. "Yes, but there's one more checkpoint, and it's heavily guarded." Before Ethan could reply, a sudden high-pitched whine filled the air. A search drone's red targeting lights swept across the dock, locking onto them. "Run!" Lyra grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a cluster of cargo containers. The drone's alarm blared, and a bright spotlight cut through the darkness. They weaved between the containers, ducking under pipes and jumping over discarded crates. The baby stayed silent in Ethan's arms, his small fingers gripping the fabric of Ethan's coat. From the shadows, a group of guards appeared, blocking the path to the city's exit gates. Their weapons glowed faintly, charging for a stun blast. Ethan's mind raced. "We can't fight them," he said. "We don't have to," Lyra replied, scanning their surroundings. Her eyes locked on a nearby fuel line running along the wall. With a sharp motion, she pulled a small device from her cloak, a compact plasma cutter. "Cover your ears," she warned. She sliced through the fuel line, and sparks erupted instantly. The air filled with the hiss of escaping gas. And then boom, a burst of flame tore through the air. The guards stumbled back, blinded by the light. "Now?" Lyra shouted, and they bolted for the open gate. The flames quickly died out. Leaving the air thick with smoke, they ran into the wastelands, the cold night wind hitting their faces. The city lights faded behind them, and for the first time, the horizon was open. Ethan glanced at Lyra. "We made it." Lyra shook her head. "We escaped. But making it will take more than just running." Her words hung in the cold night air, and Ethan knew she was right. This was only the beginning. The wastelands stretched endlessly under a sky painted with cold stars. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly, their boots crunching over dry, cracked earth. The baby slept against Ethan's chest, wrapped tightly in warm cloth. Every few minutes, Lyra would glance back toward the distant glow of the city, watching for movement. They had escaped the walls, but they both knew the council's reach extended far beyond the city gates. Running forever wasn't an option. "We can't just keep going like this," Ethan said finally, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "They'll track us down sooner or later." Lyra slowed her steps, looking ahead toward a cluster of abandoned comms towers half buried in the sand. "No, we won't run forever," she said, her voice low but steady. "We make them stop." Ethan frowned. "Make them stop? How?" She turned to face him, her silver hair shifting in the wind by showing the truth to everyone. The council hides the existence of children like ours. They call them dangerous, but if the people see him, they see he's real, alive, and harmless. Some will question the council's lies. Ethan studied her face. And others will want to destroy us faster. Lyra's jaw tightened. Yes. But at least it will be out in the open. We won't be shadows anymore. The old cum station loomed closer, its metal skeleton groaning in the wind. The towers were long abandoned. But Ethan could see faint lights blinking deep inside one. Of the buildings, he realized it must still have a connection to the planet's emergency broadcast network. They slipped inside through a broken side door. The air smelled of dust and metal. Ethan laid the baby on a padded bench in the corner, and Lyra began working at one of the consoles, her fingers moving fast over the alien interface. "This is risky," Ethan said, watching the door. "Once you start broadcasting, they'll know exactly where we are." Lyra didn't look up. "Then we finish before they arrive." The screen flickered, and a planetary map appeared, pulsing with dozens of broadcast channels. Lyra bypassed several security locks, her eyes narrowing. "In concentration, once I send the signal, every comms unit, every holoscreen, every public display will show us." Ethan stepped into view of the console camera, holding the baby so his face was visible. Lyra activated the recording. Now her voice rang out steady and clear. "People." "Avira," she began, "you have been told hybrids are monsters, that they threaten our future. But I am Lyra, daughter of the House of Kylith, and this is my son. He is alive, he is innocent, he is the future you are told to fear." Ethan spoke next. "I am Ethan Cole, human ambassador. I stand here not as a negotiator, but as a father. If you believe in justice, in truth, then know this: what the council hides, it fears. And it fears this child because he proves peace between our kinds is possible." Lyra ended the broadcast and sent it across all channels. The signal pulsed out into the night, carrying their faces and words to every corner of the planet. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then the comms console began flashing red multiple incoming transmissions. Some were supportive, voices calling for change. Others were furious, demanding the council act immediately. Ethan turned toward Lyra. "It's working." "But they're coming." Outside, the faint hum of engines grew louder. Lights appeared on the Horizon Council security ships. "Flying fast, they'll land in minutes," Ethan said. Lyra's eyes scanned the room until they landed on the roof. "Access ladder, then we're not here when they do." They grabbed the baby and climbed quickly, emerging into the cold night wind. Below, the ships closed in, their searchlights sweeping across the wasteland. "We can't outrun them in the open," Ethan said, his eyes scanning for cover. Lyra pointed toward the far side of the ridge, where the dark outline of a canyon split the earth. "If we get into the canyon, their ships won't be able to follow without risking a crash." They sprinted toward the ridge, the baby held tight behind them. A loudspeaker boomed in the alien tongue, ordering them to surrender. Ethan didn't slow. He and Lyra leaped down into the shadows of the canyon, just as the first stun bolts scorched the ground where they had been. The walls of rock rose high around them, swallowing them in darkness. They had escaped again for now. But Ethan knew this was no longer just about survival. It was war. The canyon stretched for miles, its walls twisting like the spine of a sleeping giant. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly. The baby nestled between them. The air was colder here, the wind carrying the scent of stone and dust. Above, the glow of searchlights faded as the council ships lost sight of them for the first time in hours. Ethan slowed his pace. "I think we lost them," he whispered. Lyra glanced back, her violet eyes still sharp with caution. "For now," she said, "but they won't stop, not after what we broadcast." They followed the canyon floor until the walls opened into a wide basin. In the center stood a cluster of small, dome-shaped shelters, faint lights glowing from within. As they approached, figures emerged tall, robed aliens with calm but wary expressions. One of them stepped forward, an older female with deep silver markings across her skin. "You are the ones from the broadcast," she said, her voice steady. Ethan's hand instinctively tightened around the baby. "And you are?" "We are the Free Clans," the elder replied. "We do not serve the council. We do not believe their lies." Her gaze moved to the child, and something softened in her eyes. "You risked much to show the truth. Come inside." Inside the what? Inside the largest dome, warmth filled the air. A fire pit glowed in the center, and cushions lined the walls. Lyra sat beside Ethan, her shoulders finally relaxing for the first time since they had fled. The elder studied them carefully. "Your child," the elder began, "is not a curse. He is a bridge. The council fears bridges because they make walls useless." Ethan met her gaze. "Can you protect us?" "We can hide you," the elder said. "Here, the council has no power but protection. Is something you will have to fight for yourselves." That night, as the wind howled outside, Ethan held his son close, the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around his, and something shifted deep inside him. He wasn't just running anymore. He wasn't just surviving. He was building something new over the next days. The Free Clans gave them shelter, food, and a safe place to rest, but word of their arrival spread faster than the wind. Supporters of their cause began sending messages, some offering aid, others warning of council spies. One evening, as Lyra stood outside watching the horizon, Ethan joined her. "We could stay here for years," he said. "Raise him in peace." Lyra shook her head slowly. "No, Ethan. Peace without freedom isn't real. The council will keep hunting, not just us, but anyone like us. If we don't stand, others will suffer." He studied her face, the firelight from the shelter flickering in her eyes. "Then we fight." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. Together, the next morning, the elder of the Free Clans called a gathering. Dozens of their people sat in a circle, listening. As Lyra and Ethan spoke, they told their story openly, the forbidden kiss, the child the council wanted erased, the chase across the city and wastelands. When they finished, the elder rose, her voice carrying across the camp. "This child is proof of something greater than any law. If the council wants to silence him, then they must silence us all." "And we will not be silent," the crowd responded, with a deep, unified Humaveran sign of commitment. That night, under the twin moons, Ethan, Lyra, and their son sat by the fire. The Free Clans sang old songs that spoke of resistance and unity. For the first time since it all began, Ethan felt something close to hope. As the baby drifted to sleep in Lyra's arms, Ethan looked at her and said softly, "This is just the beginning." Lyra glanced toward the horizon, where the faint glow of the council city still shimmered in the distance. Her eyes held both determination and warning. "Yes, but the storm is still coming," and as the fire crackled, they knew their journey wasn't over. But whatever came next, they would face it together, human, alien, and child, a family bound not by law, but by choice.